not only can we import data into Matlab, but we can process things in Matlab and then save it as a CSV file or an Excel file or various other types of files as well, which then we could open in different programs, or we can preserve it and open it later in a different session of Matlab. So let's say we have some data that we want to save. So first let's create some. So similar to the rocket example we've seen before, let's just say we have some data that we're creating with a function. So 30 times t. All right, so we'll make this function that determines the height of our rocket depending on time. And let's say our time vector will go for 10 seconds. And I'll have 1,000 plot points here. And I can evaluate h of t. Just to make sure this works properly, we can plot t versus h of t. And we can see this probably runs too long. Let's just run this for 5 seconds. A little bit longer to make it look good. All right, that's better. So 7 seconds, and we apply it, and we see that all of our data is there. Okay, so we want to use this in a separate program. We just want the raw data that created this plot. So we need to know all the x coordinates and the y coordinates. So we need to know t, and we need to know h of t. And we want to save that. Again, in this example, I'll save it into a CSV file. So if we look right here, what we have, right now t is a row vector, and h of t is also a row vector. I want to save it as columns. It's going to be easier to work with, like we saw in the previous example where each column was a different variable. So what I need to do is I need to make t, again, instead of this row vector that we have, I want it to be a column vector, so I can use its transpose by using that single quote or the apostrophe. So now if I print t, you see it's same data, but now it's in a column instead. And to use CSV write, we have to create a matrix, a single matrix that we're going to write to a CSV file. So the first column that we're going to save is all of the timestamps, and the second column of data is going to be h of t, all of our heights. And again, h of t gives us a row vector. This needs to be a column vector as well. So I also need to transpose that, and we see it's in a column. If we look here, I'm using this bracket notation. I'm making a matrix made of 2 column vectors. If I just run this line, we see that now side by side we have our timestamps and we have the height of the rocket at that time. So now we have this single matrix. Just for convenience, I'm going to save this as matrix A. Now I'll rerun this. So A, looking at our workspace, is 1,000 rows by 2 columns. And then this is what I can save to a CSV file. So to do that, I'm going to use CSV write, and then I need to give a name for my file. I'll call this L04 underscore rocket. I have to include that CSV. Again, here I'm using single quotes around the name of the file that I want to now write to disk. And then I have to include what matrix it's going to save as that CSV file. So it's this matrix A that I just wrote, 1,000 rows and 2 columns. And then I can close that. Now if I put a semicolon at the end, if I now run this thing, right, it plotted it. And now look at the workspace. It has this new CSV file appear, L04 underscore rocket.csv, that I just wrote. Now if I run this again, let me not plot it for a minute here. If I run this again, we have to be careful because it's going to overwrite. If there was already a file with this name, when we use CSV write, it will automatically overwrite it with whatever the new value of A is. In this case, it was exactly the same. Let me delete this just so we can see this happen again. So if when I run this code, I have now that new CSV file, and if I open this in Excel, we see that it's compatible with Excel. And if we did want to use Excel to do something like we can make a scatter plot, we can see we have the exact same data that we had in Matlab, but it's now in a format that Excel is able to handle, as well as many other programs are able to handle too. And we can get the data back into Matlab as well. So let me rerun this one more time. Yep. Okay, I have to close it out of Excel first so that I can save over it. Alright, so let's see here. So what I can do is I can clear my workspace. So we see our workspace is clear. I don't have t anymore. It doesn't know what I'm trying to do. I don't have h of t. But I can recover that data. I'll call it b just so I don't get confused. I can reread that data I just had using the CSV read now. And we see that now b contains all the data that we just saved in the previous step. We have b, and we have it without running the rest of this code here. An alternate way to store data, now this is really only for later use within Matlab, is we can use the save command. So again, I'll rerun this bunch of code here, and I'm going to use the save command. And this will make not a CSV file, but something called a mat file that Matlab is able to handle, but other programs are not going to be able to. Right, so I'm going to call this L04_rock, just so we don't confuse it with rocket with the CSV file. Now to use the save command, it's going to make a mat file with this name, L04_rock, and then I have to tell it all the variables from the workspace that I want it to save as well. So we see right here in the workspace, I have T and I have A. So for this example, let me just save A. And I'm going to stop writing the CSV file for right now. Right, so I want to save the variable A from the workspace into this mat file. So if I run this, if I come down here, let me delete it so we can see it be created again. It created L04_rock.mat. This is different than a CSV file, and Matlab handles it much nicer than a CSV file, but again, other programs don't. Let me clear my workspace. So we have a fresh slate. Okay, so the workspace is empty. Right now, Matlab doesn't know what A is because it's not defined. It's not in the workspace. What I can do, or one way to do it, is if I go L04.rock.mat, if I right-click it and click Load, you see it put A, that variable, directly into my workspace. I didn't have to save it like I would with a CSV read. And now, we see that A, it knows what A is. Alternatively, let me clear everything again. I can use the command load L04_rock. And this too, if I just run this line, loads everything contained in that mat file. Right, so instead of saving that matrix A, what if I want to save separately my timestamps and the heights? So I'm going to make a new variable h that will be a vector that's my function h, little h, to evaluate at t. So let me just run what I have up here so far. So I have my time, I have big H, which are all my heights, and now I want to save it not as a single matrix like I would have to do to make a CSV file, but I can actually save them as separate variables. So in the save command, I'm saving the t vector and the capital H vector. Right, so if I run this, and if I clear this workspace, so again, right now it doesn't know H, it doesn't know T, but now if I load this, we see in the workspace, I now have little t and I have H. Now I can use them because they have been saved previously. And one more thing we can do with these mat files is not only can we save these numbers like we could in a CSV, but we can actually save a lot more, because we can save any type of variable into this mat file for later use. So if I wanted to save little h, which is actually a function, not a numerical variable, if I go and run all of this, if I clear all my workspace out and now I load it back, I see that I can get h back and it's a function. Now a CSV file can't do this. A CSV file can only store numerical data. It can't even store text data, let alone being able to store a variable in it. And one more way we can use the save file is if I actually don't use any of these variables here, if I just say save L04_rock, what it does if I don't put any of the extra ones is that actually stores everything that's in the workspace. So now if I go and reload it, it is now stored the variable big H, little t, and the function little h as well. So if I don't specify which variables to save, it by default is going to save all of them into that mat file.